Hello. Welcome. Unsubscriptions. All of these subjects that we talk about on simulation are, again, they are the different faces of the same mountain. All of the different paths to the one end. And so we're showing all of these different aspects, and you draw parts from the videos and add them to your web of being that enables you to pierce the veil and self-realize and God realize, and then have an effortless action of Wu Wei as you channel the absolute highest in complete surrender and service to the unfolding of this. Simply this. The now. What is happening simply now. But we've lost complete awe for the now. I also spent such a massive chunk of my life, the first 28 years, in complete loss of awe for just simply now. And I dedicated myself 5 years straight, relentlessly, to seeking truth, and I pierced the veil, self-realized about a month ago. And now it's all about complete surrender to that one infinite truth. A lot of non-duality teaches the simple unsubscribing. There are matrix subscriptions that are all over saturating our webs of existence. And there's all of the simultaneity that we have to hold while we even do this conversation. First of all, non-duality literally doesn't teach anything. It just literally means to be as everything is. Perfect. Indescribable, absolute perfection on the most transcendent level. Okay, now on another layer of it, we say that, okay, non-duality is about unsubscribing. It's about not falling into the traps and the temptations of the matrix subscription so that you can pierce the veil and self-realize more optimally. So there's all these different layers. All right, let's go through the unsubscriptions, which can also be called matrix subscriptions. These are all matrix subscriptions that we are unsubscribing from. And this is why the majority of people fall into the illusions of these matrix subscriptions. They are uninvestigated beliefs. Beliefs of ego, beliefs of time, beliefs of polarization, beliefs of seeking, beliefs of fast everything. All right, let's start with ego. The ego is a contraction. The ego is a contracted, separate entity that is constantly seeking happiness outside of itself. I will acquire said objects and experiences, and then I will be happy. That is the drum that the ego beats. So it's a contracted identity, like an onion with all of these layers. It doesn't understand itself as the I am pure, bare, empty awareness of the ocean that is infinite, that is experiencing the waves. It doesn't understand that. And so it's associated with all these layers of identity, and it believes it is a completely separate individual entity by itself, never has tasted the ocean whatsoever. And that contracted egoic separate entity, it has so much fear. It wants to acquire in order to be safe. It's fallen to the greatest illusion of fear. Now, if we imagine that contracted egoic separate entity like a sugar cube, what happens gradually or suddenly, depending on if the process of self-realization is taken quite seriously and optimally, then there can be more direct piercings of the veil and self-realization, God realization, is that sugar cube can either slowly or quickly, and preferably quickly, which is what this is all about. These transmissions are all about speeding up the process. Again, on the most transcendent non-dual level, everything's already perfect. There is literally no need to speed anything up. Just be effortless being, presence, simply this, now. And then if you go another layer in, you can see that there is something to do. There's a process called self-realization that will literally cause me to stop egoically, like a separate entity, seeking happiness outside of myself, and rather recognize that the well of honey is just inside of me and it's covered by a rock. So that contracted egoic separate entity is like a sugar cube that will either gradually or suddenly, preferably suddenly, dissolve itself. It will relax, and it'll usually be met with some sort of a release and some sort of an expansion. And that sugar cube dissolves into the infinitude of consciousness, into the infinity of awareness. This is what is eternal. That is what is meant by enlightenment, is when that contracted separate entity dissolves into the infinite consciousness, into the very I amness that is eternal. It has been here, it will keep being here. It is very simply put, it is the blank paper. It is the blank paper that has eternally been colored by different words. And the words are thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, experiences, objects. Another analogy is the ocean. You recognize yourself as the ocean that is experiencing waves. So you recognize that juxtaposition when the egoic contracted entity of the sugar cube dissolves into infinite consciousness. It recognizes itself as the ocean that is experiencing the different modulations of waves of experiences. And it becomes better and better over time at surfing, riding the crest of the wave. Being in the now, simply this. Along with that process, the second one, time, also dissolves. All of the illusion of time, it completely dissolves. I am born, I die. This infinite eternal awareness does not birth and it does not die. It is always here. It's always now, being colored infinitely, differently. And that's the creative component. So the illusion of time and the illusion of finity, being finite, being a finite, separate biological creature, completely dissolves. Again, we talk about this a lot on the program, but the middle path or the middle way or the tantric path or the Goldilocks zone, it has a lot to do with your ability to ebb and flow between the physical and the absolute. In a sense, it enables you to flow between the complete illusion of time and completely hold that always, while also when somebody says, will you meet me here at 3 o'clock, that you actually show up at 3 o'clock. So you know how to sahaja samadhi, which is when you weave the tantric path, your self-realization, into the social fabric. That's the ultimate middle path, middle way expression of enlightenment, is to be that fluid Joseph in the coat of many colors, that most synthesis style expression of infinity, where you can ebb and flow to all different levels of consciousness that is piercing the veil of reality. Recognizing its oceanic infinitude, dissolving the egoic sugar cube of the separate entity. And we must, in order to actually get to these states of self-realization, the most important thing that you can do is to recognize the input stream. I've been talking about this through high-level perception and through so much of what my work is. High amount of vigilance with the input stream. Everything is so salient that comes in and that affects you. All of the coloration is so important. And so, in a sense, again, at the most transcendent perspective, it's the absolute surrender to the perfection that it already is. Yes. And then also another layer of it is that in order to actually pierce the veil and self-realize, the level of discernment with the input stream is critical. Are you watching polarization propaganda? Because if you are, that is literally all about fear. It is all about separation. Distance yourself. Wisely and gracefully distance yourself. Do not be a martyr. Do not run around yelling at other egoic, separate entities that are contracted and that are watching polarization propaganda saying, you should not watch that. Don't do that. Don't be a martyr. Be graceful and be wise and just distance yourself from the polarization propaganda. That 24/7 news cycle of mass media garbage has so many perverse incentives associated in its archaic infrastructures that are indoctrinating our childlike infinity into egoic, separate, contracted entities that is slowly dissolving to the decentralized infrastructures that are being born today. And that's what we see with media. That's what we see with blockchains, cryptocurrencies, decentralization. Don't fall for the polarization between the politics domestically in the US or in a geopolitical sense between the greatest economies on the planet. Don't fall for the polarization. Firmly anchor unity consciousness, God consciousness. Again, happiness, seeking it externally, is as an egoic, separate entity, is the parable of the prodigal son. That as we go outward first, inevitably, no matter what, we hit a breaking point in recognizing that happiness cannot be found externally, and that eventually we turn inward and we realize that the well of honey is under the rock. If you are to seek inward. Seek inward. All of these different paths on the faces of the mountain that are pointing to the one truth, all of the perennial wisdoms, focus inward on those perennial wisdoms and hang those up in your lattice work, in your worldview, in your essence. Color your awareness or your consciousness, color the infinite awareness consciousness with the words that maximize your ability to seek inward, to self-realize, to pierce that veil. Because when you're seeking fame, money, clout, materialism, when you're seeking all of those things externally, you are hitting breaking points where you are not living from a place of 24/7 bliss. You're living in a place that's giving you 5 minutes of bliss per day. The 24/7 bliss only comes from self-realization. You realize your own godness. You realize your own infinitude. You realize your own sourceness, your own I amness that is infinite, that is eternal, and that is being colored by experience. You recognize you are the ocean. We've always been the ocean. This is what we do. This is what non-duality does. It does this creative expression game. Again, on the input stream, unsubscribe from fast food, fast sex, fast information, and fast high fructose corn syrup. Unsubscribe from all of that. It's quite common sense at this point to think that having a one-night stand does not energetically affect me is absolute insanity. To think that me consuming a fast food animal that has been under only stress, secreting only the hormone cortisol for days and days on end, and then me consuming that is not affecting me is crazy. It's insanity. Same thing with the high fructose corn syrup. You can't eat 40 grams of sugar in a soft drink and then think that that's not affecting you horribly. And same thing with information as well, that it's common sense now that it does require a more nuanced and slowed down process of analyzing many different sources of information in order to be able to even have a synthesis, to have a Joseph in the Coat of Many Colors perspective on the complex issues. Yet at the same time, again, from a very transcendent non-dual perspective, it is just simply this happening, just this nowness. That is it. And there's nothing to do. And so there's all of these different layers of simultaneity. And so we'll be unpacking that in our next video. And also unsubscribe from bars, from clubs, from sports, from festivals. If you're going out and playing sports and you're doing that from a place of oceanic I amness, from a place of knowingness, from a place of self-realization, and you're playing sports to keep up on your health, fantastic. That's your expression of infinity. It's incredible. Now, if you're going to bars and clubs and festivals to escape because you want to drink alcohol because you think that's going to make you happy, because you think you might find somebody that you absolutely might fall in love with that's going to make you happy, or that you want to dance at a club and have a one-night stand, again, you can take it from an enlightened perspective as well. Maybe you want to go and actually dance and express yourself, and that's the way that the wind is moving you. But you recognize you're the ocean undergoing that experience. You are not a contracted, separate, egoic entity that is going into a club to hang out with other contracted, separate, egoic entities that are all seeking for happiness outside of themselves. And it's very similarly with festivals. And we can also include the peak experience chasing there as well. I will seek happiness on this 3-day music festival. I will seek happiness by traveling to a different country around the world. I will seek happiness by taking in entheogens. I will seek happiness through these external means. Now, all of these things can serve you if you go to Greece for a couple weeks and you immerse yourself in the Neoplatonism. You might actually have a pretty serious upgrade in your conceptual frameworks that enable you to be able to self-realize. And similarly, if you take a heroic dose of psilocybin, you may actually commune with non-duality and then aim to re-baseline yourself to that oceanic infinitude. So now you know that there's a lot of unsubscriptions that have to happen. There's a lot of unsubscribing that has to happen in order to self-realize. The last 5 years for me of relentlessly, persistently, full-time job seeking truth had so many unsubscriptions, so many sacrifices. But that's what enables you to pierce the veil. That's what enables you to pierce the veil. And there's very simple ways to start. All of you have feeds. You all have your feeds that you browse. Last year in 2020, I literally went on a near year-long digital detox so that I could actually be able to hone in on all of the perennial wisdoms across the traditions so that I could have the Satori that happened about a month ago that occurred. And now Alan Sakyan's dissolved, Atlas is dissolved. It is literally just non-duality now. The simple thing you can do is, along with these different principles and adding those, adding the principles that are going to help you self-realize and unsubscribing from the principles that don't help you self-realize. In this case, all of your feeds have a bunch of people that you follow that promulgate a lot of the concepts of ego, of separation, of fear, of contracted identities and entities, of finity, of polarization, of mass media garbage, of seeking money, fame, materialism, fast food, sex, information, high fructose corn syrup, all this type of stuff. Go and unfollow those accounts. Unfollow those accounts. Your input stream is so valuable. Be vigilant about your input stream. All you have to do is go once and unfollow all of the accounts that no longer serve your self-realization, and boom, you've done a massive accelerating step in cleansing out what is the input stream that comes in to help you pierce the veil. Again, on a very most transcendent level, everything is already perfect. That is what the non-dual teaching is. This is perfect. It is just this that is happening right now. And to be able to relax into the infinitude of this nowness is it. And to be completely surrendered to that infinite intelligence is it. That is it. On another layer, with true simultaneity, this discernment with unsubscribing is crucial. Unsubscribe to all of these things that we mentioned on the show and subscribe to only what serves you piercing the veil to self-realize. I love you. Thank you for tuning in. Like the video if it brought you value. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us a comment below where you're at in this process. We'd love to hear from you. Share the video with people that you know that it would positively influence. That's all. Much love. Thank you.